Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this slightly delayed seminar. It's my real pleasure to introduce Edmund Totin, who is going to be with you in a moment, speaking about the work that we're planning around the legacy of adaptation interventions. Edmund joins us as part of the YESI Fellowship Scheme. And that scheme has reopened for applications for this year with another 10 fellowships available. Edmund joins us from the World Vegetable Centre and has a glittering CV that includes roles at the forefront of the IPCC process, as well as the acronym that I'm going to forget, Edmund, the World Adaptation Program. Yeah. Okay, I'll let Edmund speak to that because he knows it better than I do. But welcome everybody, and welcome Edmund.
Thank you, Don. And welcome everybody. We have some colleagues also online. And just to give a bit of background of this study, it started in October last year. We were at the Adaptation Future Conference, and we attended the same sections, and it was about adaptation resistance. And I said that, coming from innovation systems, and I did my PhD in innovation systems, so I was more interested in see how people adopt technology. So maybe we can apply this kind of frame to adaptation science. And we got the opportunity of YESI, and together with John, we put this proposal together, and luckily it was selected. So this is the first preliminary findings, and it's work in process. We want to share the first flavor with you, and also we expect to get your feedback. And human technology interactions, it's not always taken for granted. Okay, so now it's working. Well, we have seen that over the last decade, there have been quite some change in climate change research and climate literature, both in terms of the scope and also in terms of numbers. So we can see, for instance, here the number of studies on vulnerability between 78 and 2010, we have a 64. So this is the occurrence of those keywords in the adaptation research. And then between 2011 and 2015, we have 209. And then the vulnerability between 2016 and 2020, we have 266. So we can see that it's growing rapidly. And also in terms of the scope, the new things and emerging, and we look at some key themes like human systems, equity, social justice, inclusions. And we look at the XPM, which is the synthesis report for policymakers, 2014, and the latest one. And then we have, in terms of number, when we look at human systems in the 2014 report, we have about 32. The same human systems in the latest report, we have something around 65. So it shows how interest is shifting. And the same for equity, which were around 6 in the previous report, and the latest one on 2023 report, we have more than 20. So we can clearly see that the interest is moving from technology to more human centers. And emerging themes, for instance, from the latest reports, so we have climate equity and social justice, effectiveness in terms of practice, methodology, but also in terms of indicators. We have climate resilience development, where we can't segregate adaptations, mitigation, but how we bend them together. Adaptation, mitigations in the broader picture of development, indigenous and local knowledge, the subjects which brought a lot of attention. And the last Adaptation Future Conference, it was really one of the key themes. We have knowledge diversity. So we don't approach adaptation or mitigation only from a scientific perspective. So those are things that are emerging. And it's also clear that human-caused climate adaptation has an impact across sectors, regions. And this is, for instance, a figure I took from the latest report, where we can see that, yeah, the impact is clearly established. And yeah, we need actions. We need to take action. And this is quite a common rhetoric that we need to take action now, now, now. And the way this is a frame, and also I have been part of the National Adaptation Plan and the NAP for Benin, but also in Senegal. We can have the feeling or the assumption that the options that are designed are desirable. And we need those options for change, to see change happening. But we have also emerging literature showing that people sometimes they don't welcome those options and they resist to them. And that's the beginning of our story. And coming from the innovation science perspective, I said, well, maybe looking at adaptation resistance alone is just one piece of the landscape. And that's this dichotomy framing, where when we have adaptation option, people can decide whether they take it as adoptions or resist to it. But between those two extremes, we have many things happening in the middle. That's why we said, well, let's look at more closely how people interact with formal-driven adaptations measures. Here, I use formal-driven adaptations just to make a difference from autonomous adaptation, something that emerged from community, for instance, and themselves. So it's not this, so it's something planned for them. So we can see those kind of options in the policy document. I mentioned in the NAP, the National Adaptation Plan. Here, we acknowledge that, yeah, we should take a middle ground and see between those two extremes. So what is happening? And we said, well, let's maybe use this framework of bricolage. You know, we slightly changed the scope of bricolage, what we call this research adaptation bricolage, because bricolage basically is institutional bricolage, where we can have three forms of action or practice. People can accept what come in as institutions. So this is the first piece, what is called aggregation. So they accept it, they digest it, and they use it. And the second option, what we call here alterations. I'm sorry, I don't know if someone is managing the Zoom. Thank you. Yeah. So the alterations. That's where people, they don't take a thing for granted. They have they show their capacity to repack it, to reshape it, and make it fit their need and expectations. And the last option, which is the articulations, we can see a kind of similarities with the rejection or resistance. So here we are more interested on what is happening in the middle, because we see many people are exploring people's acceptance and also the resistance. But in the middle, we don't see so much. Well, we did a systematic review around this, looking at climate adaptation, climate bricolage, food productions in Africa. And we came up with 476 scientific academic paper using the two database, Scopus and Web of Science, and where we selected 37, which we see as more relevant for the scope of our study. So this is how those 37 papers were distributed. And we can see concentrations in Ghana, Ethiopia, Kenya, and South Africa. Of course, those are English-speaking countries. Of course, language was not one of the selection criteria. And yeah, here, as I mentioned, this is a work in progress. I just highlight a few cases of alterations, where we can see that people, they take initiative to repack, to reshape or change the scope of the plan options as they were introduced. So the first case is from Senegal, where we can see that farmers, they readjusted the project interventions. It's about a new variety of millets. So they prefer using the old that they were using because they see that this kind of variety fits better the local conditions. And they justify this, though the new variety has a very longer production cycle, by the fact that it's produce of food, and it's they use the stick for roofing, and compared to the shorter cycle varieties that was introduced by projects. We have another case from South Africa where people were exposed to a new cultivar, and they again also decided to shift the scope, to change it, and choose another direction. And the same thing with agropastoralist from Kenya this time, and people show their capacity not to take it as those interventions were introduced. Well, looking at those three cases, what we learned is that broadly, when we look at adaptation projects, we should not expect outcomes as the project starts. And this has some implications because when we look at interventions introduced in a community, we clearly see from the cases that the people, they are not just beneficiary, they are stakeholders, they are actors, they actively engage with this, using the experience, using the knowledge, using the asset to change those interventions in the way that they meet the aspiration. So clearly, it will be very hard to plan for them and predict what the outcome should be. And we also see that adaptation, sorry, something's in my screen. Okay, so adaptation can be seen as a bricolage process where when we introduce adaptation options, it's interplays with people's knowledge in a system. So we see the case of seed, we see also the case of a new infrastructure. So we should not be surprised that the option doesn't resonate as we plan, because it has to do with people's stake. It has to do with people's aspiration. But when we come to the project planning, where sometimes donors, they want to see clear outcomes. They want to see a theory of change where you clearly mentions what are the targeted goals, what should be the planned activity as a kind of a roadmap to reach this. It questions, and we say, well, how can we engage with this kind of flexibility in adaptation planning? So we should make clear that we don't have full control over outcomes because, here people's history, people's culture matter, and we don't also operate in isolations. When we have a project, at the same time, many other initiatives might be going on. And so they're somehow connected. Because we operate on the same people. So the bricolage perspectives draw attention on the need to make space for agency and care for people. It's not only about technology, it's also about people. And it asks for a bit of flexibility. I mentioned the case of theory of change. And this is a statement I made at the Adaptation Future, that we need to educate donors and to be flexible. Even though they have the resources, we cannot predict what could happen because we don't have the full control of the landscape. And so the institutional bricolage can be a very nice framework to look at adaptation from a very different perspectives. And things may not percolate as design. But what should we do? That's the bigger question we have. At this stage, we don't have any clear response to that. We have, as a researcher, we spend most of our time developing new proposals. And sometimes people and the donor, they have clear log frame. And we should follow and make sure that we have measurable indicators and clear deadline. So in this kind of setting, how do we play with that? So this is kind of question we put on the table, and we'll be very happy to also get your perspective. Thank you. John, I don't know if you want to come in at this stage.
I can do. I mean, so Edmund and I have been talking about this piece of work for a little while, and I guess there's two things that we're drawing attention to. One is the way that the knowledge and resources that adaptation brings are kind of reconfigured, produce adaptation outcomes that might not be as anticipated. But there's also this question of kind of longer term legacy that at the moment we can't get hold of because the literature doesn't speak to this, but we have a sense that those resources, even in the cases of resistance that are identified within the literature, which really talk in terms of the rejection of adaptation interventions, they still leave new knowledge networks. There's the contact between, the resources that are brought that are left in a setting and may have impact over the longer term that can be picked up and used by actors that in the bricolage literature are referred to as bricoleurs, the people who are able to kind of select and recombine the ideas and resources that they come into contact with and blend those and make use of them in ways that are consistent with the context and the history and the cultural and the knowledge resources that already exist in a place. Now, we don't have evidence for this at present, but we're certainly interested in exploring the extent to which that's the case.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I also want to acknowledge the contribution of Carla Roncoli. I'm happy Carla is also my leadership. And this is something we are trying to develop together.
Fabulous. Thank you, Edmund. Thanks, everybody, for attending in person and online. I know we've got a lot to think about and to take away, and selfishly, that was the purpose of the meeting today. From our point of view, we were hoping to get some more inspiration about how to take forward this piece of work that is just starting to kind of emerge and take shape in our minds. So thanks to everybody for your participation, and thanks for Edmund for being here.
Thank you, John, for making this happen as well.